Okay, now we're going to talk here in our last unit. We're going to talk here today about group processes. That is, how the behavior of the individual is influenced by being in a group. So we're going to start up here in the first video and pretty much do an overview of what social psychology has to teach us on the topic. So when it comes to behavior, it's in any group, whether that group be an organization or that group be a city or a state or a nation or something, there will be what's called norms. Norms are shared expectations about appropriate behaviors. It's very similar to when you're having a conversation of culture, because in the same way that culture is transmitted socially, that is, we learn the appropriate things from watching the people around us. So we learn the appropriate norms based on watching the people in the organization. Okay? Descriptive norms define what most people do, most people think or feel, or something like this. A descriptive norm in an organization might be at break time, you go to this room over here. I don't know, something like that. And if you don't, if during break time you don't go there, it's not like illegal or something, but people will kind of look at you funny. Prescriptive norms, on the other hand, are much closer to a law, okay? That is, they are, during break time, everybody must go to the break room, all right? Something pretty straightforward. So they are they develop over time. This is culture. It develops over time. It is transmitted socially. New members adjust it as we come through. So it's flexible and fluid, just like culture is flexible and fluid. Muzaffar Sherif, one of the earliest social psychologists, wanted to know if he could develop a norm, if he could see a norm develop in a laboratory. So here's what happens. This is just as a side. If I put you into a dark room and put a spot of light on the wall and say, look at the light, it's going to appear to move, all right, even if it is 100% stationary, all right? So that's the autokinetic phenomenon. So he takes three people, puts them in a room, and he shines a light on the wall, and he asks them, how far did the spot move, all right? And on the first day, you can see person one says, oh, it moved 8 inches, and the second person says 2 inches, and the third one says, it's pretty stable, okay? On the second day, he brings them in, does the same thing. Look at this right away. Look at this. This person one adjusted their perceptions quite radically, just like that. And then all of a sudden, by the fourth day, look at this. They put them in the room, and they have now created a norm, an expectation, a standard. Everybody now settles on 2 inches. Apparently, person two was the most influential, right? So we find that, as a general rule, behavior is contagious. I mean, right from birth. If you go to a hospital where they have brand new babies in the room, they're going to have what's called contagious crying. If everybody's contented and happy and, it's harmonious. I can't imagine it's ever harmonious, but imagine it's harmonious, and then one baby cries, boom, the entire room is going to start to cry. And it's just who we are as organisms. It's what we do, okay? So Solomon Asch took this idea of conformity, and he wanted to see how much we would conform. And so in his classic study, and I'm sure you've probably seen this, he basically, here's the task that people are asked to perform. I'm going to show you the standard line and 3 comparison lines, and your job is to tell me which of the comparison lines is the same as a standard. Okay, and so the answer is 2 here. See, if you put people in a room alone and they do this, they're correct like 99.9% of the time. It's a pretty easy task. Okay, so he brings people in groups of 6, and what happens is he has 5 people that work for him, and then 1 naive participant. And so he brings up this task, and he asks the first person, what's the correct answer? And, they go 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and everybody's cool, and they go through about 3 times, and they get the right answer, and everything's good. Then somewhere on the 4th trial, what's going to happen is the first person gets his setup, and the first person goes 1, and the second person goes 1, and the third person goes 1, okay? Remember, these are people that work for the experimenter, right? And so by the time you get to our naive participant, our participant is absolutely torn. Our participant knows the answer is 2, but has just had 5 people tell you the answer is 1. What are you going to do? And about one-third of the time, people, in fact, say 1, okay? Even though their eyes are completely telling them that that is the wrong answer. That's conformity in action. Why do we conform? Number 1, normative social influence. As we said, if we do not follow descriptive norms, people look upon you poorly. Okay? Oh, you're weird. You're an outcast or something. So we just don't want to get disapproval. But it's possible that this person is going, okay, think about this. I believe the answer is 2, but 5 people believe the answer is 1. 5 is a much bigger number than 1, okay? I'm the only one that believes it's number 2. So why don't I just believe the 5 people? And so in some kind of a way, informational social influence is pretty logical. I mean, especially in scenarios where there is room for, room for differences or something, okay? However, the one that's perhaps the scariest is Stanley Milgram's study on obedience. And I'm not going to get into a lot of details on it because I could go on for 30 minutes or more on Milgram. But suffice it to say, with very little influence at all, simply an experimenter wearing a white lab coat saying, "This is science, you must continue." Perfectly average normal human beings are willing to almost essentially kill another human being with nothing more than, "This is science, you must continue." And so the thought was that this is just a dude in a white lab coat. Imagine the atrocities that happen during wartime when you've got military commanders saying, if you don't do what this is, that's called desertion and we're going to shoot you for it or something. So it was pretty powerful how extreme of a behavior you could get a perfectly normal human being to perform just by saying, "This is science, you must continue." Huh? And so, as we said, Sharif studied norm formation, Ash studied conformity, and Milgram studied the obedience. Huh? All right, so now, some of the other influences, or how groups influence us, or look at the title of the slide: individual behavior in the presence of others, social facilitation. If a task is simple or it's very, very well learned, we're better with an audience, okay? And so it's a very powerful effect, and in fact, it turns out that it even works in ants, all right? They have, honest God, with ants. Ants are digging dirt, okay? And then you measure how fast they dig dirt. And then you bring in an audience, okay? An audience, a handful of other ants, right? And then the ant that's digging dirt digs faster, right? It just does, and that's what human beings do in the face of a simple or well-learned task. Okay? However, in scenarios where people are working together in a group, there's 2 possible outcomes that can happen. You find that if the outcomes, if an entire group of individuals share the outcome together, if you can identify the individual components of each person in the group, you know what they've done. Say, for example, in a relay race, okay? So the outcome is 4 people working together, the total. But you can see exactly, the first person starts the race, and then they get to a point, and they hand the baton to the second person. You can identify exactly how much that first person has contributed to the group outcome. In that scenario where you can identify, you get social facilitation. However, in many situations such as group projects, the total grade at the end is shared by everybody. But you can't dissect and pull apart who put what into the overall project. And in that case, you often get social loafing. And social loafing is very problematic, and it can happen on a global basis as well as on an individual basis. Okay, it can happen among countries as they contribute to, disaster relief in some part of the world or something. But when you have social loafing, you have people that are called free riders, and free riders are people that that are in the group but don't do anything. All right, because they're going to just get the group result in the end. Okay, a sucker is the person that works hard in the group. So anyway, social loafing is problematic. Okay? Latane and Dabbs did a whole lot of studies, and they involved like dropping pencils was their most common thing. They would like go into an elevator, wait till the elevator was moving, and then drop a box of pencils and measure, how many pencils people helped them pick up. And it turned out that as the number of people in the elevator went up, the number of pencils that they helped pick up went down. Okay, we call this diffusion of responsibility. The more people there are around that could potentially help, the less any one individual will perform. Okay, so this scenario is, if you have a heart attack in a room full of people, nobody's going to help you. If you have a heart attack in a room with one other person, you're going to be okay. All right, it's really kind of a creepy thing. Another interesting aspect of how the presence of others influences us is the notion of bystander intervention, which came to light after the story of Kitty Genovese. Very, very briefly, she's a bar manager in Queens. She comes home at like 2 o'clock in the morning. She's attacked. 38 people see this. Somebody opens their windows. Hey, leave her alone. The attacker runs off. Attacker comes back. The attacker runs off. The attacker comes back and kills her. Okay, and this attack took 30 minutes. People saw. One person called the police after she was already dead. Nobody did anything. Okay, and so here's kind of a basic model that was developed to help explain the bystander intervention problem. Although it's much more complicated, but number one, you're not going to help somebody else if you don't even notice that the incident occurred, okay? Because if 38 people witnessed the attack, then another 150 slept through it, right? Interprets as an emergency. It's Queens, New York, it's 2 in the morning. If somebody's yelling, oh, he's killing me, does it literally mean you're dying, or is it somebody being melodramatic, okay? I don't know, okay? Assumes responsibility. Yeah, it's just like, there's 38 other people watching, and this goes back to diffusion of responsibility. There's 38 other people here. I see them all. Somebody must have already called the police, right? Out of 38 people, somebody must have already done it, okay? And then there's other factors as well, like the danger factor. That dude's got a knife. I'm not the most qualified person here, all right? I don't think so. And so any attempt to help must go through a series of hurdles before help will ever be attempted. And another kind of scary idea is de-individuation. That is, in groups, especially in situations where each individual is not identifiable, you can get de-individual. This is mob mentality, right? When you get a mob together and they're all roaming the streets, they're no longer controlled by social constraints, okay? It's kind of a scary thought that normally groups keep our behavior in check, but in certain situations, it can get out of control. And then finally, group polarization. And this is the idea is, if you get... here, in this example right here, what they did was they had people take a test of prejudice. I mean, they scored them, and they took people that were high on prejudice and people that were low on prejudice, and then they put them together into groups and said, hey, talk about prejudice together. And it turns out that if you take people that are high prejudice to begin with and have them talk to each other about prejudice, they get worse. And if you take people that are low in prejudice and have them talk to each other, they become even less prejudiced. So it's kind of an amazing thing. Like the individual differences among college freshmen at a university tend to diminish by the time they become seniors. They tend to kind of come together. Okay, and this is somewhat problematic in some scenarios, like prison, where perhaps the standard is kind of toward aggression and violence, and a perfectly normal person gets put into prison, and now they will gravitate towards whatever the prevailing attitudes are. All right, very good.